Good morning everyone. I am Hemant Mehta, and in today's session we are going to discuss about the Java server pages, also known as JSP. These are the topics. First of all, we are going to discuss about the overview, the life cycle, advantages over the servlet. Then we are having basic tags, directives, action tags, which are used for creating the JSP page. Then we are having a few implicit objects, form processing, session tracking, cookies, database access, exception handling. Then the expression language. This is one of the alternate to write down the Java code. Similarly, we are having JSTL and the custom tag, and the last will be the XML processing. Okay, now let's discuss the advantages of JSP over the servlet. We can generate the HTML response from servlet, but also it is difficult to use and the error prone. But when it comes to writing a complex HTML response, writing in a servlet will be a nightmare. So JSP helps in this situation and provides us flexibility to write a normal HTML page, including our Java code whenever it is required. So generally what happens whenever you're writing a servlet, you are going to write down your HTML code inside the Java code. So when you are going to write down a complex response or page consists of HTML, it would be complex, right? But in the case of JSP, you can write down a simple HTML code, and whenever it is needed, you just embed your Java code, right? Now JSP also provides some additional features like tag libraries. There is a JSTL, expression language, custom tags that helps in faster development of the user views. There is a presentation logic. JSP pages are easy to deploy. We just need to replace the modified page in the server, and the container takes care of the deployment. For servlets, we need to recompile and deploy the whole project. So it is the main major difference over here. In the case of servlet, whenever you are making any changes in your servlet file, you are supposed to redeploy the whole project once again, and after the new changes will be reflected. But in the case of JSP, you just replace the modified JSP file into the web container. Deployment will be taken care by the web container, and changes will be directly reflected. No need to redeploy the whole project. Actually, servlet and JSP are complement to each other. We should use servlet as a server-side controller and to communicate with the model classes, whereas JSP should be used for the presentation layer. Model classes means your Java class which will contain the pure business logic in context of the MVC. We are having comparisons over here. Servlet and JSP both are used for the dynamic data handling. Servlet handles the business logic, JSP handles the presentation logic. There are three lifecycle methods for the servlet: init, service, destroy, that we have already discussed in the previous sessions. JSP will have similar three lifecycle method, that is JSP init, underscore JSP service, JSP destroy. Out of these three, underscore JSP service method cannot be overridden. In the servlets, we were writing your HTML code within the Java, that is out.println HTML body. Likewise, in the case of JSP, we are writing Java within HTML, and we can use the scripting elements to perform these things that we will discuss later, and both runs within a web container. Now, life cycle of the JSP. Basically, it is consists of few stages. That's how your JSP file will be processed. First of all, that is called a translation phase. JSP page does not look like the normal Java classes. Actually, JSP container parse the JSP pages and translate them into the generated corresponding servlet source code. If JSP file name is home.jsp, usually it is named as a home_jsp.java. So this is the translation phase where your JSP file is consist of the HTML code as well as the Java code. So during the translation, all the Java code will be copied into the corresponding JSP lifecycle methods in your servlet, like JSP init, JSP destroy underscore JSP service. In the respective location, the data will be copied, your source code will be copied, and servlet file will be generated. Stage number 2, compilation. If the translation is successful, then container compiles the generated servlet source code to generate the class file. Third, class loading. Once JSP is compiled as a servlet class, its lifecycle is similar to servlet and it gets loaded into the memory. Next one, instance creation. After the JSP class is loaded into the memory, its objects is instantiated by the container. What kind of object? The objects that you are using in your respective servlet source code. Along with that, servlet config and servlet context. These two objects are provided by the web container that will be created. Initialization. The JSP class is then initialized and it transforms from a normal class to servlet. After initialization, servlet config and servlet context objects become accessible to the JSP class. During the instance creation, these two objects will be created, but it will not be accessible. Once they are initialized, they are accessible to the JSP class. The next one, that is called the request processing. For every client request, a new thread is spawned with servlet request and the servlet response to process and generate the HTML response. And the last would be the destroy phase, the last phase of the JSP lifecycle where it's unloaded from the memory. So likewise, we are having a whole cycle. So in the diagram you can see we are having a one JSP file named my.jsp.jsp. It will be translated into the corresponding Java file, that is a servlet file, that is a my.jsp underscore jsp.java. Then it will be compiled. So class file will be created and it will be loaded into the memory and it will be initialized. Once it is initialized, it will be available in the form of the servlet class to the web container. Again, this is the overview. JSP init method. Declared in the JSP page interface. This method is called only once during the JSP lifecycle to initialize the configuration parameters. Second, underscore JSP service method. This method is going to accept two objects, HTTP servlet request and the HTTP servlet response object. This method is declared in the HTTP JSP page interface and response for handling the client's that is responsible for handling the client request. The third would be JSP destroy, declared in the JSP page interface to unload the JSP file from the memory. This is the summarization: translation, compilation, loading, instantiation, initialization, request processing, and the destruction. This is the JSP file processing. See the diagram. On your screen you can see first one page request made for the JSP. Let's say hello.jsp. So that is the one. A request will be received by the web container. First it will check whether the requested file is available or not. So it will read the hello.jsp file. That is the stage number 2. File is available. Now it will be converted. That is, it will be translated into the Java file. That is a hello servlet.java, right? So this phase, it is called the translation phase till the generation of the Java file. So once the servlet file is generated, the step number 4, that is called compilation. Your Java file will be converted into the class file. Class file will be loaded into the memory. Instance will be created, and whenever the request will be received, the class file will be, that is a servlet class file, will be executed. That is called the request processing phase. In the last, a response will be generated and it will be forwarded back to the client. This is all about the lifecycle method and the JSP processing. Okay, now we are having a application design with the MVC architecture. In the architecture model 1, you can see the MVC framework over here, where from the browser the request will be received, and this is the JSP. This is your view component, right? And from the view it will decide the Java beans, that is a controller and the model. Java beans, basically there is a model part where the business logic is available, and the servlet, that is a controller. Over here I have combined the model and the controller. So request will be received, it will load the JSP file to take the input, then it will be forwarded to the model classes to process the data. If the database interaction is required, it will interact with the database, and the final response will be forwarded to the browser, and by displaying some of the view components or the file, that is a JSP file. So this is the architecture model 1, where I have combined the model and the controller, and the JSP, that is my view component. This is the architecture model 2, where I have separated the model, view, controller, 3 separate entities. First, from the browser, request will be received to the controller, that is your servlet. It will decide which file is supposed to be loaded. So it is going to load the Java beans, right? From the bean files, it is going to process the business logic. If database interaction is needed, it will interact with the database, and the final outcome will be generated, and it will be forwarded to the JSP file, right? And from the JSP file, it will send the final response to the browser. So basically, controller will decide which file is supposed to be invoked in order to fulfill or in order to execute the business logic. Based upon that, the bean class or the view component will be loaded. After the processing, the view component will send the response to the client in the form of the response. Okay, so this is all about the overview and the processing. Thank you.